If you've been filling up your tank lately, you probably noticed something. Gas prices are going up, and they're not going up everywhere the same. In some states, drivers are paying 7% more than they did last year. In others, they're actually paying less. Here are 12 states where gas prices are rising the fastest. 1. Oregon drivers are paying more at the pump than almost anywhere else in America right now. Prices jumped 7.6% in just 1 year. A gallon of regular gas cost $3.55 last Thanksgiving. This year, it's $3.82. That's 27 cents more. Over a full year of driving, that adds up fast. If you're filling a 15-gallon tank once a week, you're spending about $210 more per year just on gas. The state has specific problems driving this increase. Supply costs are rising across the Pacific Northwest. Fuel inventories are getting tighter. And Oregon doesn't produce its own oil. The state has no refineries of its own. Every drop of gasoline has to come from somewhere else. That makes Oregon dependent on refineries in Washington and California. When those refineries have problems, Oregon feels it immediately. When those states implement environmental programs that reduce gasoline supply, Oregon pays more. In September 2025, refinery maintenance across the West Coast created supply disruptions. Oregon had no backup plan. Prices spiked. Some cities saw increases of more than 10% in just a few weeks. The state also has its own clean fuels program. Experts estimate this program added about 7.5 cents per gallon in 2024. Oregon's climate protection program started in 2025. The full impact isn't clear yet, but it's not going to make gas cheaper. Environmental regulations have a cost. Oregon drivers are paying it. Transportation costs make things worse. Getting fuel to Oregon takes time and money. Those costs get passed straight to drivers. And unlike states near the Gulf Coast, Oregon can't tap into cheap pipeline distribution. Everything moves by truck or rail. That's slower. That's more expensive. The price increase hit different parts of the state differently. Some areas saw jumps as high as 10%. Portland drivers paid more than those in rural areas. But no part of Oregon escaped the trend. Pendleton, a smaller city in eastern Oregon, saw one of the highest metro-level increases in the country. Prices there jumped 10.6% year over year. Compare Oregon to the national average. The country as a whole saw prices drop slightly over the past year. Oregon went the opposite direction. While most Americans saved money on gas, Oregon drivers paid significantly more. That's not just frustrating. For families on tight budgets, it's a real problem. 2. Alaska. Alaska saw gas prices jump 7.1% year over year. That's the second biggest increase in America. Prices went from $3.48 per gallon to $3.72. In one city, Juneau, the increase was even worse. Prices there jumped 13.7%. That's the highest metro-level increase in the entire country. Juneau drivers went from paying $3.21 to $3.65 per gallon. Alaska faces unique challenges. The state has massive oil reserves. It produces hundreds of thousands of barrels every day. The North Slope produces more oil than many entire countries. But most of that oil gets shipped out of state. Alaskans don't benefit from it at the pump. The infrastructure tells the story. Alaska has limited refining capacity for its own use. The state's challenging terrain makes distribution expensive. Roads are sparse. Distances are enormous. Everything costs more to move. What might cost a few cents per gallon to transport in Texas costs dollars in Alaska. In rural Alaska, the problem becomes extreme. Some communities pay $5 or more per gallon. They're completely isolated from standard supply chains. Fuel has to come by plane or barge. Weather can shut down deliveries for weeks. When a community runs low on fuel in winter, there's no quick fix. Even in Anchorage, the state's largest city, prices stay high. The city depends on a complex and expensive distribution network. One pipeline problem can spike prices across the region. Unlike the lower 48, Alaska doesn't have redundant supply routes. When something breaks, there's no backup. Alaska also deals with seasonal demand. Winter heating needs are massive. Natural gas prices surged in early 2025 because of cold temperatures. The state experienced some of the coldest weather in recent years. When heating costs go up, it affects the whole energy market. Energy companies prioritize heating fuel over gasoline. Supply gets tight. Transportation costs explain a lot. But Alaska also faces supply constraints. The state's petroleum infrastructure is aging. Investments haven't kept pace with need. That creates bottlenecks that drive up prices. Refineries operate at near capacity. There's no room for error. The irony is hard to miss. Alaska sits on some of the richest oil deposits in North America. The state literally pays residents an annual dividend from oil revenues. But its residents pay some of the highest gas prices in the country. The oil wealth doesn't translate to cheap gas. 3. Idaho ranks third for gas price increases. Prices rose 5.7% over the past year. That pushed the average from $3.09 to $3.27 per gallon. Idaho isn't usually considered an expensive gas state. It's normally competitive with neighboring Mountain West states. But this year, it joined the top tier for price increases. The state has a few refineries, but not enough to meet demand. Idaho imports most of its gasoline from other states. That makes it vulnerable to price swings in the broader region. When Utah or Washington refineries raise prices, Idaho has no choice but to pay more. Like Oregon, Idaho felt the impact of refinery maintenance and supply constraints across the West. When refineries in Washington or Utah have problems, Idaho drivers pay more. There's no way around it. The state doesn't have enough local production to cushion the blow. Summer demand made things worse. Idaho saw an increase of about 11 cents per gallon in a single month during summer 2025. That was one of the biggest monthly jumps in the country. Only Utah saw a comparable increase. Families planning summer road trips to Idaho's national parks paid more than they expected. The state also shifted to summer blend gasoline earlier in the year. Summer blend is more expensive to produce. It's designed to reduce evaporation in hot weather, but it costs more at the pump. Idaho drivers paid that premium for months. The switch happens every spring. But this year, the price difference was bigger than usual. Transportation costs play a role too. Idaho sits in the interior of the Mountain West. Getting fuel there takes longer and costs more than getting it to coastal states. The state doesn't have major pipelines like Texas or Louisiana. Fuel comes by truck. That's slow. That's expensive. Those logistics costs get passed directly to consumers. Diesel prices in Idaho surged even harder than gasoline. Diesel went up 33 cents per gallon in just 1 month. That was the largest diesel increase in the nation. Trucking companies, farmers, and businesses all felt the hit. Idaho's economy depends on agriculture. When diesel costs spike, food production gets more expensive. Farmers pay more to run equipment. Truckers pay more to haul crops. Those costs flow through the entire economy. Idaho's economy depends heavily on agriculture and transportation. When diesel costs spike, food prices go up. Shipping costs go up. Everything gets more expensive. What starts as a fuel price increase ends up affecting groceries, construction materials, and consumer goods. 4. Washington State has the highest gas prices in the nation right now. Drivers there are paying an average of $4.66 per gallon. That's $1.50 more than the national average. It's also more than double what drivers pay in the cheapest states. Year over year, Washington saw significant increases, though not as extreme as Oregon or Alaska. The state implemented a 6-cent gas tax increase on July 1, 2025. That brought the state gas tax from 49.4 cents per gallon to 55.4 cents. That's the third highest state gas tax in America. Only California and Illinois have higher state taxes on gasoline. But the tax increase isn't the whole story. Washington also has a Climate Commitment Act. This is a cap-and-invest program that functions like a carbon tax. Experts estimate it adds about 50 cents per gallon to fuel costs. That's a hidden tax. It doesn't show up as a line item on your receipt, but you're paying it every time you fill up. The state's low-carbon fuel standard adds more. Environmental regulations drive up the cost of producing and selling gasoline in Washington. Refineries have to meet strict standards. That costs money. Drivers pay for it. Critics say these programs are driving up costs without delivering results. Supporters say they're necessary to fight climate change. Washington also faced infrastructure problems. The Olympic Pipeline, which carries refined petroleum across western Washington, had an unexpected temporary closure. That created supply disruptions. Prices spiked. The pipeline runs from refineries in Puget Sound to distribution terminals across the region. When it shut down, even temporarily, fuel supplies got tight fast. Refinery repairs added to the problem. Multiple refineries in the region went through maintenance at the same time. That reduced output. Less supply means higher prices. Refineries schedule maintenance during slower demand periods. But in 2025, demand didn't drop as expected. The combination of maintenance and steady demand created a squeeze. King County, which includes Seattle, had the most expensive gas in the state. Drivers there paid an average of $4.88 per gallon. Spokane County, on the eastern side of the state, paid less. But even there, prices hit $4.31. That's still well above the national average. The state's gas tax will keep rising. Starting in July 2026, the tax increases by 2% every year. That's automatic. Lawmakers don't have to vote on it. It just happens. It's tied to inflation. The idea is to make sure tax revenues keep pace with construction costs. Critics blame the Climate Commitment Act for much of the increase. Supporters say it's necessary to reduce emissions. Either way, Washington drivers are paying the price. Families are cutting back on trips. Commuters are looking for carpools. Some residents have started buying their gas in Oregon or Idaho when they can. 5. Montana saw gas prices rise 3.2% year over year. That might not sound like much, but it's significant when most states saw prices drop. Prices went from $2.85 to $2.95 per gallon. Montana is normally a cheaper state for gas. This increase pushed it above its typical range. The state has its own oil production. It has refineries, but Montana still imports a lot of fuel from Canada and neighboring states. When regional prices go up, Montana follows. Montana also faced seasonal challenges. The state saw prices rise in 25 out of 51 weeks during 2025. That's not random volatility, it's a clear upward trend. Transportation costs matter here too. Montana is rural. Distances are long. Getting fuel to small towns costs more than getting it to cities. Those costs show up at the pump. The state also deals with diesel price increases. Montana's economy depends on trucking, farming, and natural resource industries. All of those use diesel. When diesel prices go up, the whole economy feels it. Natural gas prices surged in Montana as well. Cold weather in early 2025 drove up demand for heating. That affected the broader energy market. When one fuel gets expensive, others tend to follow. Montana ranks 21st in the nation for gas prices as of late 2025. That's middle of the pack. But the direction matters more than the ranking. Montana is trending up while most states trend down. 6. Nevada doesn't produce oil. It has no refineries. Every gallon of gasoline comes from California or Utah. That makes Nevada vulnerable to price increases in both states. When California implements new environmental regulations, Nevada pays for it. When Utah refineries go offline for maintenance, Nevada feels it. The state typically pays more at the pump than the national average. Nevada relies on fuel shipments that take time and cost money. Those logistics costs are unavoidable. Las Vegas and Reno face different challenges. Las Vegas gets most of its fuel from a pipeline connected to California refineries. Reno is closer to the fuel infrastructure coming from Utah, but both cities pay premium prices. Nevada also has significant local taxes in some counties. Clark County, which includes Las Vegas, adds 36 cents per gallon in local taxes. Washoe County, which includes Reno, adds 62 cents per gallon. Those are some of the highest local gas taxes in America. The state's gas prices went up during 2025, especially during summer. Refinery maintenance on the West Coast reduced supply. Nevada had no choice but to pay more. Tourism drives Nevada's economy. When gas prices go up, it affects how much people travel. Fewer road trips mean less business for casinos, hotels, and restaurants. 7. Utah saw one of the biggest monthly gas price increases in the nation during summer 2025. Prices jumped 12 cents per gallon in a single month. That brought the average to about $3.37. The increase was driven by multiple factors hitting at once. Utah has 5 oil refineries. That's a lot for a relatively small state, but Utah sells a lot of its refined gasoline to other states, especially those on the West Coast. When West Coast demand goes up, Utah refineries prioritize selling to higher-priced markets. That reduces local supply. Prices in Utah go up as a result. The state also shifted to summer blend gasoline earlier in the year. That added about 90 cents to the seasonal price peak. That's one of the highest summer blend premiums in the nation. Utah imports crude oil from Canada and Mexico. Domestic production in Utah isn't enough to meet demand. When global oil prices rise, Utah feels it immediately. The state also has a fuel tax with an inflationary trigger. The tax automatically goes up each year to keep pace with inflation. That adds a few cents per gallon every January. Northern Utah generally has cheaper gas than southern Utah. Box Elder County paid an average of $3.20 per gallon. Kane County paid $3.47. The difference comes down to distance from refineries. Diesel prices in Utah surged even harder. Diesel went up 29 cents in a single month. That was the second largest diesel increase in the country after Idaho. 8. Hawaii consistently has some of the most expensive gas in America. As of late 2025, drivers there paid an average of $4.44 per gallon. That's the second highest in the nation, just behind California. Year over year, Hawaii saw modest increases, but the state started from such a high baseline that even small increases hurt. Hawaii faces unique challenges. The state is geographically isolated. Every drop of gasoline has to be shipped in by boat. That takes time. It takes money. Those costs get passed to consumers. Hawaii has limited refining capacity. Most fuel comes from refineries on the mainland or in Asia. When global shipping costs go up, Hawaii pays more. The state also has high local taxes. Maui County adds up to 24 cents per gallon in local taxes on top of the state excise tax. That's higher than the state tax itself. Tourism drives Hawaii's economy. Rental cars use a lot of gas. Tour operators use diesel for buses and boats. When fuel costs go up, vacation costs go up. Hawaii also depends on oil for electricity generation more than most states. When oil prices rise, electricity bills rise. Fuel costs affect everything. The state has been trying to shift to renewable energy, but that transition takes time. For now, Hawaii remains heavily dependent on imported petroleum. 9. California has the highest gas prices in the nation. Drivers there paid an average of $4.59 per gallon as of late November 2025. That's more than $2 higher than the cheapest state. California has held this position for years, but the gap keeps growing. The state has the highest gas tax in America, 70.9 cents per gallon. That's before you add in environmental program costs. California's cap-and-trade program adds about 23 cents per gallon. The low-carbon fuel standard adds more. The California Air Resources Board estimated the fuel standard would add 47 cents per gallon before recent amendments. New estimates put it at 5 to 8 cents, but even the lower estimate adds cost. Underground gas storage fees add another layer. State and local sales taxes add more. All of these costs stack up. California also closed refineries in recent years. 2 more closures are planned. That means less in-state production, more imports, higher prices. The state produces oil. California is the 8th largest oil producer among U.S. states. But production has been declining because of state policies. Less local production means more dependence on imports. Refinery maintenance caused problems in 2025. Multiple refineries went offline at the same time. Supply dropped. Prices jumped. Some areas saw gas hit $5 per gallon or more. California's strict fuel standards also limit where the state can import gasoline from. Not every refinery produces fuel that meets California's requirements. That reduces the number of potential suppliers. The state has geographic challenges too. Northern California and Southern California have different supply chains. What affects one region doesn't always affect the other the same way. 10. Illinois has the second highest state gas tax in America, 66.4 cents per gallon. The tax went up again on July 1st, 2025. The increase was 2.82%. That's because Illinois tied its gas tax to inflation. Every year, the tax automatically goes up. Illinois drivers don't get a vote on these increases, they just happen. The law requires it. The state also has a complex tax structure. There's a motor fuel tax. There's a sales tax on top of that. Local governments add their own taxes in some areas. Chicago drivers pay even more. The city has additional local taxes and fees. Filling up in Chicago costs more than filling up downstate. Illinois imports most of its gasoline from other states. The state has refining capacity, but not enough to meet demand. When Midwest refining costs go up, Illinois follows. Natural gas prices in Illinois also increased in 2025. 7 out of 9 major utilities charged higher prices compared to January 2024. Some increases were over 36%. That's important because natural gas is used to generate electricity. It's used for heating. When natural gas gets expensive, it affects the whole energy market. That includes gasoline. Illinois also has environmental policies that affect fuel costs. The state isn't as aggressive as California or Washington, but regulations still add cost. 11. Pennsylvania? Pennsylvania has the third highest state gas tax, 57.6 cents per gallon. The state saw gas prices rise during parts of 2025. In 1 week in June, prices jumped 8.6 cents per gallon. That brought the average to $3.38. Refinery access is a problem for Pennsylvania. The state has some refining capacity, but it's limited. Most fuel comes from the Gulf Coast or imports through East Coast terminals. When global oil markets spike, Pennsylvania feels it fast. The state is far from major refining centers. Transportation adds cost. Pennsylvania also has high combined state and federal taxes, about 58 cents per gallon total. That's before any local taxes or fees. Natural gas is a different story. Pennsylvania produces a lot of natural gas. That's helped keep heating costs more stable. But gasoline doesn't benefit from that local production. The state approved major utility rate increases in 2025. Electricity bills went up. Natural gas supply costs increased. Columbia Gas proposed raising residential bills by more than 11%. Energy is getting more expensive across the board in Pennsylvania. Gas is part of that trend. 12. New York doesn't have the highest gas prices, but the state saw steady increases during 2025. New York City and the surrounding metro area pay the most. Prices there are consistently higher than upstate. Taxes are part of it. But supply constraints play a role too. New York imports almost all of its gasoline. The state has limited refining capacity. Most fuel comes from terminals on the East Coast or through pipelines from the Gulf. The state also has environmental policies that add cost. New York doesn't go as far as California, but regulations still affect pricing. Energy costs across New York increased in 2025. Electricity rates went up. Natural gas prices surged in some areas. The broader trend is higher costs for all energy. New York's aging infrastructure is a problem. The electrical grid needs upgrades. Gas distribution systems need repairs. Those costs get passed to consumers. New York also has high taxes. State and local taxes add up. Combined with federal taxes, drivers pay a significant amount per gallon just in taxes. The state's economy depends on transportation. Shipping costs affect food prices. Delivery services cost more. When gas goes up, everything else follows. The pattern is clear. States with rising gas prices share common problems: high taxes, environmental regulations, limited refining capacity, dependence on imports, geographic isolation, aging infrastructure. Some states face all of these problems at once. Others face just a few. But the result is the same. Drivers pay more.